evolve and grow. And I'm very interested in looking at the leading individuals who come forth in the nation to express the soul of that nation, because every nation has a soul, just as we have souls as individuals. I guess before I talk about the history book, I'll just backtrack a little bit on my first two books. The first one is called the Shambhala Impacts, and their esoteric astrology is talking about the legend of Shambhala, the planetary center called Shambhala, that is also known as the crown chakra or head center. It's also known as the place where the will of God is known, where the entity that we call the planetary logos is anchored in etheric substance, etheric physical substance here on this planet, and whereby the purpose of this greater entity, the planet itself, is being directed from, as such, by the great being we know as Sanat Kumara, or the Ancient of Days. Melchizedek also is another one of his names. And so this book goes into some of the Buddhist history of Shambhala, talks about the color chakra, tantra, and so forth. And it goes into the history of the planet in terms of where we've all come from, where we've individualized as souls. We go back around about 20 million years into the time of ancient Lemuria, and we trace the first Shambhala impact, or the first release of this enormously powerful and potent spiritual force into the planet that is to do with the energy of will, spiritual will. Something that humanity has not learned how to use in a constructive way to date. And then I trace it through the second Shambhala impact at the major disaster of Atlantis, and then into more recent times at the end of this first Second World War. Lays the groundwork in many ways for my last book, which is called The Hidden History of Humanity. Before I talk about that, there's just this other one that came out called The Masters of the Seven Rains. I was asked to write this by many colleagues because they felt that there was much sort of misinformed information about the Masters. So I tried to put it into, well, at least my spin on the subject anyway, and trying to put it into a context of these beings not so much being glamorous individuals, but being more members of an organisation that looks over and guides humanity. It's a picture of...
That's Hungarian, the
Yes, you recognise him being Hungarian, wouldn't you? Yes.
I was born in Hungary.
Indeed. And the Master Rakotsi is also known as the Count Saint Germain, and subsequent incarnation, and was the one of the masters or custodians of the seventh ray. And I have other masters in here that most people would have heard about, such as the Master Kutumi, and the Master Moya, and the Master DK, and so forth. But I also speculate in a few past lives of some of these masters as well. So
just a short question to this one. How do you recognize those individuals on hand of the astrological background, or?
I think they're recognized not so much by appearance, but just by an inner resonance that one has with these beings, and very rarely they will appear to people, to guide and to teach. Quite often most people get in touch with their astral reflections on the astral plane, which are basically other entities and not the masters themselves. But it's an area that's meant to inspire people, because it's one of the first things that people ask about when they start to tread the path, is this subject of the masters, who they are, what is their purpose, and there's also a description of how they relate to the rays, the various rays, and so forth as well. Several of them are custodians of these seven energies that come into the planet. So we have the Master Jesus as well, of course, a well-known master, Master Hilarion, and so forth.
It seems like to me, astrologically, that's already determined by our birth. Under the constellation of the stars, how we first born, it's already determined how we're going to vibrate.
There's a predetermination that's determined by the soul. Yet we're not just individual souls incarnating. The predetermination goes back to the soul group and the master at the center of that soul group, which group is playing its part within the greater planetary plan, the greater planetary scheme of things. So, as Jung once said, free will is doing that which I know I must do. It's having a sense of your purpose within your group, within the greater planetary plan, and that's what the individual soul purpose is about, really. A lot of people want to know more selfishly about their charts. Tell me about myself. Read my fortune, all that kind of stuff. But essentially, Esoteric Astrology tries to find a person's purpose within the great scheme.
I just wanted to be sure that it's not given to us immediately, everything, and we cannot do anything about it. So.
Well, we all have karma to work out, yet we can work off karma as well. So we do have free will and latitude to work out our part in the greater plan, that's for sure. And that's the thing. These masters of wisdom have great power and potency on the planet, but they are restrained by karmic law to only watch over and guide humanity. They have to allow us to determine our own destiny, whether we get it wrong or right. And there's been several times in history where they've stood back with holding their breath, just wondering what's going to happen, because they can't interfere. They can only inspire. So anyway, I suppose I could tell you a little bit more about my latest book called The Hidden History of Humanity. And this project was started in 1993. And it is based on a statement in Esoteric Astrology that inspired me to write this, which basically says that we do not have a fixed time from which to reckon in terms of the exact calculations of the zodiac. And this led me back into various areas of inquiry, which puts an alternative spin on on history, which goes back at least 20 million years in terms of the evolution of consciousness for humanity, and back in ancient Lemurian times. And this book is about tracing the evolution of consciousness since that particular time to this place where we are now in the so-called Aryan or fifth root race, going into the so-called sixth root race. And I talk about the various types of consciousness which have been developed in the different races, the various historical memories of the floods of Atlantis and all the other various things that went on in those times. But my chronology is way, way, way longer than even some of the most popular New Age authors around. Most of them only go back about 10 or 25,000 years. I go back millions of years, and I try and advance reasonable propositions as to why this chronology is correct. A lot of it is based on the writings of Blavatsky, H.P. Blavatsky, and The Secret Doctrine. But a lot of the writings in that are based on the Hindu teachings, which are the oldest spiritual teachings on the planet, and the most esoteric as well. And in this book I have, the first section is basically a synopsis, or a basic synopsis of the Secret Doctrine and what it contains, and a few explanations of the fundamental principles. The second part is all about cycles, the Hindu yugas, the Manvantaras, the astrological cycles, and I have various timelines and tables that show the evolution of consciousness from Lemurian times, and I also have a geological proof where I try and bridge from esoteric science to exoteric science. And this is my goal for many of the future books that I have planned with this. I have 6 volumes planned. This is just the first one. Because the material I've been developing since 1993, I still have many files to get through. But the third section was one of the most exciting for me, because Blavatsky says in The Secret Doctrine that one of the greatest sources of historical information is in the first 6 chapters of Genesis in the Bible. And she talks about how Genesis actually comes from the Hindu teachings, even though it's been overwritten and mangled and messed with for thousands of years. She points out where those fundamental distortions lie. And so one can pick one's way through. And this is basically a chapter and verse explanation of the first 6 chapters of Genesis, which is a history